This is a recording of the Amud today in Taanit, Yud Beis Amud Beis. And we are starting on the very bottom of Yud Beis Amud Aleph. So the Gemara said that Ike de Amri Amar Rava Loshon Ela Kishelo Yashen. This is true that a person is able to eat before a fast, so long as he didn't go to sleep. Aval Yashen, what if he went to sleep? Eina Eichel, then he cannot eat. Esvi Abaya now asks the question. This is where we were left off yesterday. Yashan ve'amad. We have another brisa that seems to say that if somebody went to sleep, but then he got up, and he got up before the fast, hareza eichel, and he's allowed to eat before the fast. So why are you saying that if somebody went to sleep, b'shinas keva, that now when he gets up, he's also to eat? We have another brisa that says you're allowed to eat. So for the Gemara, no. There's a brisa that says that Yashan v'Amad, that somebody went to sleep and he got up and he's allowed to eat, is talking about a situation, Hasan bin Misnamnim. You're talking about a situation when somebody was dozing. Heichi dami misnamnim. What does it mean that somebody's dozing? Rav Ashi, we turn the page now to Yud Beis and Beis. Nim v'loy nim, tir v'loy tir. Somebody who was like somewhat asleep, but not asleep. Somebody who was awake, but not awake. That is, the korale v'ani, if you called him, he could be able to answer. But you can't ask him something that would actually require some svar, some real thought. But if you ask him about something that just happened, he would be able to have a recollection, be able to remember. So he's somewhat awake. He's according to Tosfos, at the sort of the beginning of the sleep. And when you're sort of fitful, you're coming in and out before you go fully to bed. So in that situation, since the person didn't really fall asleep, so therefore he is in fact permitted to still continue eating. Now, the Shulchan Aruch, in fact, lahalacha, we paskin that in Orach Chaim in Tov Kuf Samach Dalet. So we say if somebody went to sleep a shinas keva and he made no tanai about eating, so then he would not be able to eat when he woke up. But if somebody went to bed with a shinas keva, but he had the condition that he intended to wake up to eat before the fast, for example, he set an alarm clock, etc. He had it in mind. So that would be different. Then he would be allowed to eat before the fast. When it comes to drinking, the Mechaber doesn't seem to make a distinction between eating and drinking. So that means you would have to have a Tanai for even drinking. But the Ramah says no. The Ramah says that by drinking, if somebody woke up before the fast to drink, it doesn't have to be any sort of explicit Tanai because that's inherent that people would, be able to drink before the fast. All right, so continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Kahana Amar Rav. Yochid shekiba olav tainis, also benilas asando. A individual who accepted upon himself a fast, he's not supposed to wear leather shoes. Chayshinan shema tainis tziba kiba olav. Why? Because we're afraid maybe he's accepting upon himself a communal fast where these things would be asur. And it's not clear what kind of a fast he was intending to do. So it says the Gemara, what should a person do in order to make sure that there's no question that was only Taanit Yachid? Heichil La'evid, what should he do? Amar Rabba bar Rav Shila. Right, so Rabba bar Rav Shila says, Le'mahachi. This is what the person should say. Le'machar, ahei lefanecha b'Taanit Yachid. You should explicitly say that I'm going to do a Taanit Yachid. In which case then, you would be permitted to walk around in the shoes. So continues the Gemara. Amalei Rabbanan Rav Sheshas. So the rabbis said to Rav Sheshas, Hakachazinan Rabbanan de Mesayim Mesaynu v'asul beitaniso. So the rabbis were mastering to Rav Sheshas about other rabbis that they saw going on a fast day. They were going to the yeshiva and they were wearing shoes. So Rav Sheshas got upset. Ikbid. He got annoyed. V'amar lehu dilma mechel nami achol. And he said, maybe they also are eating. Meaning, if they're taking the fast so lightly, if they're so not serious about the fast, then maybe they're also eating. Right? That's a pretty harsh accusation to lobby against these rabbis, but he's saying that they're not taking the fast seriously. They're not taking the fast seriously, and therefore they are, dressing in the shoes. So maybe they're in fact eating. Yeah. So obviously over here we're talking about a communal fast, and they were clearly not taking it to the severity that Rav Sheshes thought was necessary. Rashi explains, "Uparshim darkei tzibur." Right, they're going against the what the masses are doing, and clearly, v'les de Shmuel, they don't hold right. Rav Sheshes doesn't hold like Shmuel. In other words, these rabbis they weren't going against the halacha; they were going with Shmuel. And Rashi continues says, "Va'nan ha'idna nahigin k'Shmuel." We in fact paskin today like Shmuel. That is to say, that is ein tainus tzibur beBavel el Tisha B'av b'vad. The only tainus tzibur that exists in Bavel is Tisha B'av. That's it. The only tainus tzibur that exists in Bavel, meaning in the Western world, meaning anywhere today that would require the Chamishi Inuyim is Tisha B'av. The other fasts don't require it. And so Rav Sheshes was upset, but these Talmid Chacham were clearly going with the opinion of Shmuel. The Gemara continues and says, although it's true that Shmuel holds Ein Tainus Tzibur B'Vav El Tisha B'Av B'Vad, nevertheless, Abai v'Rava Ma'ili Ki Misayim Me'apanta. Abai and Rava would on these communal fasts, they would wear their shoes sort of backwards, upside down or something. Remember Mazutra, Mechalfe, the Iman L'Smaila, the small Amina, they would wear their shoes on the wrong feet. Rabbanan de Be'er Ashi, Nafki Kirchayu. But the rabbis from the yeshiva of Rav Ashi, they would go on the road in a regular manner. Savri Kiodam Shmuel, they held like Shmuel, in Taanit Siva Bavel Tisha B'Av. They held like Shmuel that the only time that one is having to do all of these kinds of inuyim, etc., is on Tisha B'Av, not on any of the other fasts. So it sounded like, or it seems like that there was a fundamental machlokes between Rav Sheshes, by Rav, etc., and Shmuel. Shmuel's fundamental opinion eventually was adopted. And the truth is that there is la halacha, maybe a Baal Nefesh is something different, but practical halacha, there is no requirement to do these kinds of inuyim on a regular fast day. As we said before, that these kinds of inuyim on a regular fast day, which is done in order to increase a person's davening, so that's different than the situation of the Tisha B'Av where it's mamish for avelos. Avelos is one where they were most machmir with all these inuyim. Yeah, continues the Gemara. And we do in fact pass like this in Shulchan Aruch and Archaim Tavkov Samches. We said there's no tainus tzibur that's aser and malacha in Chutz La'aretz, in Eretz Yisrael even, right? Except for what? Except for Tisha B'Av. It's interesting because the Gemara in Brachas Yud Zayin Amar Beis tells us that those are machlokes depending on the town. Some places had a minute to work on Tisha B'Av, some places didn't have a minute to work on Tisha B'Av. Rav Shimon Gamliel said that everyone should make themselves into a Talmid Chacham because Talmid Chacham doesn't work on Tisha B'Av. Yeah. So continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Loiva Adam Ta'anisa Uperea. A person is able to go into the trading business of fasts. That is, if a person doesn't want to fast on a certain day, he can make up the fast on a different day. So Kiam Risa Kamar the Shmuel, when this was said to Shmuel, we have two versions of this. So Amar Li, so Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, B'chineder kibola, this is like he accepted upon himself a neder, that he's not able to not pay it back. What are you talking about? L'tzurei nafshi kabola. What he was accepting upon himself a task, it meant to give himself certain tsar. So if he's able to give himself tsar, so he does so. Im loy motzi, loy mitzar nafshin, and if he can't, he can't. So what do you mean this idea of loy v'adam tanise pereh? A person's able to borrow. If he can't fast today, then he could, essentially eat today and borrow another day. That would become his ashlama to when he's going to fast. Shmuel saying, what are you talking about? It's not a neder that you have to fast. He's makabel mitzar himself. So if he's able to mitzar himself, great. If he can't, he can't. So it sounds like from this at least that at least in this version, it sounds like Shmuel's not going with the opinion of Rav. However, we have an Ikeda Amre, Amar Avidah Marav, Loiv Adam Tanisa per person is able to, if he doesn't want to fast today, he can borrow another day. In other words, today he can eat and then he'll just make it up on a different day. So in such a situation, right, this is not a tashlumin that we're talking about somebody's a bit of an illness, he has a huge headache or something like that, or he ate by mistake. We're talking about a situation where somebody just decided he doesn't want to fast. So it's not obviously we're not talking about any communal fast as Rashi notes. Obviously, we're not talking about a public fasting because, of course, then that you can't be loy v'adam upareh. The only time you can make it up v'ash tashlumin is if you couldn't fast for some sort of illness reason. So the Ikeda Ami says, Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, loy v'adam tanisa upareh. A person is able to fast a different fast day if this day didn't work out for whatever reason. So the Kamei Kamei the Shmuel, Rav Yehuda says, when I said this in front of Shmuel, I'm really pshita. He said to me, of course, if you're able to, if you didn't fast today, you could fast a different day, because lo ya'el neder. It's not going to be any worse than a neder. And neder means lamati boy l'shlume amazed l'machal yom achina, and on a neder, can you not pay the neder back tomorrow, the day after? Of course you could. So you could fast on a different day also. So this would obviously agree then with Rav's opinion. Yeah. So says the Gemara, Rav Yeshua Breder Rav Idi Iklul Be Rav Asi. Rav Yeshua, the son of Rav Idi, came to Rav Asi's house. Avdula Igla Tilto. They made him a really fancy dish, some sort of a cow, a young calf that was very delicious. So Amalei L'Taimar, they asked him to eat because presumably he wasn't eating. So Amalei L'Taimar, they said, why don't you eat something? So Amalei B'Tanisa Yasivni, he says, I'm sitting in a fast day. Now this story bugs me a little bit because why didn't you tell them before they wasted the whole Igla Tilto that you're sitting in a fast day? You see them making it, tell them that you can't eat it. For whatever reason, he didn't. Amrulay, v'loiziv marveli par. So they said to him, okay, you can't eat because you're sitting in a fast. So just fast tomorrow and eat it today. Don't you, Rav Yeshua Breder, if you eat the whole of this member of Huda Marav, that Leva Adam Tanisa for a person is able to make up a fast another day. So Amalu, no, he says that may be true, but this is a Tanis Chalemu. This is a Tanis Chalem. Chalem, a bad dream, and he's taking a fast for that. That has to be done immediately. That has to be done when the person had the dream, not at some later date. And the Gemara continues on that note. The Gemara says, "How weit we go on a Tanis Chalem? Amar Rabba Bar Mechasi, Amar Rav Chama Bar Guria." Omar Rav, Yav Tainus L'Chalim Keish L'Naris. A Tainus for a bad dream is great, like a fire to chaff. In other words, it is very appropriate to have the fast day right when you have the bad dream. So Omar Chizda, Mamish on that day, right? That's when you should do Tainus Chalim, right after you have that dream. Omar Rav Yosef Fil B'Shabbos. It's so important to have that fast. Even we say that you should do it on that day. Even if it's Shabbos that day, you still fast. You're fasting on Shabbos, you are, essentially not honoring the Sabbath. So what do you do? So the Gemara says, what you should do is Leisa Tanisa Tanisa, right? Which we have in the Gemara, Brachas and Lamed Aleph. So fast another day to make up for it, the fact that you did something that was not appropriate by fasting on Shabbos. So fast a different day after Shabbos in order to make up for that. Yeah. So continues the Gemara. Says the Gemara, we're up to the Mishnah now. The Mishnah says, and we just finished talking about the first series of three fasts. So Avru Elu V'Loinenu of the first series of three fasts went away, and there was no rain. Based in Geyser and Gimel Ta'aniyos Acheros. Then we're going to have another three fasts. This is the second series of three fasts. Bezdin goes into Gimel Ta'aniyos Acheres Al Tzibor. Bezdin is going to now be gezer another 3 fast days on the Tzibor. Oichlan v'shaisen mi ba'id yain. And people are allowed to eat and drink until it becomes the day, or the next day, meaning they can eat and drink from the day before. Basum b'malacha, but on the day of, they're also to do malacha. Uberchizu v'sichu v'nilas hasandal v'tasha shemita. But now they are also in the Chamishinui. V'noilan esamar chatzoyes. And you have to close the bathhouses. So again, so over Elav Loinenu, if the first series of 3 fasts went away and there was no rain, so now you have Gimel Taniyas Acheres. This is the second series of 3 fasts. In other words, you can eat the day before, no problem. And as we said, you can eat until the morning, essentially until until the daytime. Um, but here, it's not merely a situation where you're fasting, but we're also doing the chamishinim, etc. We're cutting down on all of the sort of fun stuff, and and you're also going to be asur malacha, right? It's not just v'chitza sicha nesasan tashamita, but you also asur to work. But as we'll see, there's going to be a question like, why do you have to say Nel the Mechatzos if you say it's Asr and Chitza? We'll have to get to that later. So Avru Eluv Loinanu, what happens if these second series of 3 fasts goes and there still is no rain? So based in Gerzin Aleyan Oid Sheva, there's another series of fasts, a third series of fasts. These are 7 fasts. Shein Yigmel Tiny Esalatziva. This is altogether 13. Yeah, you have 7 plus the first 3 fasts and the second 3 fasts. So 7 plus 6 gets you to 13 fasts altogether. So Harei Elu Yiseres Ala Rishonos. How are the, or we're going to see later on, there's a bit of a different gersa, or Ma Elu Yiseres Ala Rishonos. What's the new restrictions in the third series of 7 fasts over the second series of 3 fasts? So the Gemara says, here we're going to say that you have to sound the alarm, which we're going to see in the Gemara later on. On Yud is going to be a question about, so how do you sound the alarm? Do you sound the alarm with a shofar? You sound the alarm by saying Anenu. Yeah, but you sound the alarm. And you also close the stores. So until now we've said Vasum Malach, it's also to do work in the second series. But here it's not merely us to do work, it's the stores are us to be open. So there's a difference between the stores and the work. In other words, by working we mean you. You're working at home. You're not allowed to work. But you don't necessarily have a store, you still can't work. Here we're going one step further. It's not just us to work, but the stores that sell product, that also has to remain closed. So says the Gemara. B'sheni matinim chashecha, on Mondays, if the fast is on a Monday, then they're going to allow the stores to be open towards the end of the day in order to be able to give people the chance to go buy food to break the fast. So even though we just said the that you close the stores on the third series, but nevertheless on Monday you do allow them to be open. Remember, these are 7 fasts. So you do allow it to be open on a Monday at the end of the day. And on Thursday, Chamishi, Mutar Melek for Shabbos. And on Thursday, the stores are able to be open all day because of Kurd Shabbos. So over Eluv Loinanu, and what happens if these third series of 7 fasts go and there's still no rain? So the Matan, Masav Matan, we stop working now, doing business. Bibinyan, in building homes, Venetia, planting gardens and vineyards and orchards and all that. Be'eres in a Venisuin, where we slow down or stop getting married. We stop saying hello to people. When people are disgusting to their Rebbeinu Shalom, they throw them away. Right? Like people who are disgusting to their creator, to their Rebbeinu Shalom. And then we conclude and we say, Actually, it's an Islam. The Yechidim, the very big Yechidei Segula in the community, they will continue on fasting all the way through Nisan. Yes, Nisan one of Nisan comes along and rains come down. So then, a Siman Klal, that is a Siman Klal. Shneimar like Tzir Chitim Hayom. This is it not the Tzir Chitim and Hashem is going to bring the rain? It's going to be a klal for them, showing them how angry Hashem was that you wanted a king. So at this stage of the Mishnah, we have now discussed the intermediate three fasts and the subsequent third series of seven fasts. Says the Gemara, Bishlam Kulu Isbehu Tainug. It makes sense, says the Gemara, as we all go into the widest of the lines on New Bays and New Bays. It makes sense, says the Gemara, Bishlam Isbehu Tainug V'chitza V'sicha V'tashlamit. It makes sense. All of these have Tainug. You want to ask her up because it's a fast day. Avamalacha, it's Malacha taking away somebody's ability to work. It's not like you're causing him a problem. Maybe he has a problem monetarily, but fundamentally, he's very happy not to be working. Because Malacha is a tsar. So Amar Chizda Marav, Yirmiyah Barabba, Amar Kra, so Chizda quoted Yirmiyah Barabba, said the name of the pasuk. Kishu Soim, Kiru Atzara, Asfu Zikanim. Right? The pasuk says that they should be Mekadosh the day of the fast and call on Atzaras and have a gathering of the elders. So the Moshe was the Atzaras, just like Shuas, just like Shmini Atzaras. Atzaras Asr Basias Malacha, just like by Atzaras, just like by Shavuos, it's also to do work. After it's also Basias Malacha. So too, it's also to do work. Um, so it's also to do work. What do you call? The same way, like Atzeres with Aserab work, so too the Tainus is going to Aserab work. Says the more Ima Atzeres meorta af Tainus nami meorta. But the Atzeres starts in the evening before, so why don't you have the Tainus start from the evening before and say from the evening before? That's when the fast begins. Amar Zero, Lidim Farsha, Limined Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba Amar Kro. She says it was explained to me as follows. Asfu Zakanim, Dumya Dasiva Zakanim. But when we're saying the elders are gathering, that's going to be compared to the normal gathering of the elders. Masiva Zakanim B'yom, just like the elders gather by day. Avtsoim Nami B'yom. So too, since the Zakanim really only get together by day, so too the restrictions. Um, in this case talking about Asiyas Malacha and the like will only or with regards to eating, all these things are only starting by the day. Says the Rav Eim Mitziara, maybe we should start by the midday. Rav Shisha, Brei Rav Idi, Messiah Le Rav Huna. No, it doesn't start by the middle of the day, it starts at the beginning of the day. This is a right to Rav Huna. The Amar Mitzafar Kinuf Yeche Avet. In the morning there would be a big commotion, a big pandemonium, a lot of people crushing together. So how do they manage that? So Amar Mitzafar Ad Palga the Yema Ma'ayin. I'm sorry. Says the Gemara. So Amar Mitzafar, no. Where I skip, Ve'em Mitziaram Rav Shisha Brei Rav Idi Messiah Rav Huna Amar Mitzafar Kinofia. No, they used to gather together all the way back in the morning. All in the morning they would gather together in the shuls, etc. And so therefore, since they gather together in the morning, so you don't wait to start everything until the afternoon. So the Gemara says, Heichi Avid, what do they do? Actually, when they're having one of these series of fasts, what do they do? So until Chatzos, they would focus on the matters of the town. Is the town coming up short in anything? Is the town missing something? What's wrong with this town that it's obviously having this rain? But once that is done, once that is finished, so Mikan ve'elech rivet diyom v'karin v'safar v'avtarta. You have a quarter of the day where they're studying, or I'm sorry, they're reading the Sefer Torah, they're reading Veichal, whatever it may be, and they're reading the Haftarah. Mikan ve'elech, the last quarter, I'm sorry, of the day. Right, so we have the first half of the day is the leads and the misties of the town. And then the second half of the day, the first quarter is engaged in like reading the Torah and the Haftarah. And the second quarter of the day, meaning altogether the second half of the day, Be'in and Rachamim, that's when they daven. Shneim Veikum al Amdam, Veikor B'Sefer Torah Salikeim, Revi'as Hayoim, that they got up and they were reading in the Sefer of Torah Hashem a quarter of the day. Revi'as Misvadim, Mushtachim Hashem Alakeim. And you see a quarter where they're also bowing down and to Hashem. So it sounds like what? That the fact is Vayikro b'Sefer Torah Salikeim. So that was the beginning, right, of the second half, and then the third half. I'm sorry, the third and last part of the day, the way we're working it into is the fact that right. So the first half they're being ma'ayin what's wrong with the town. The second half they're doing first quarter, or should I say the first half of the second half. They are reading the Torah, reading the Haftarah, and then the second half of this day, they are davening. So the Gemara says, "Revi'as hayayim, right? Revi'as misfadim, mishtach v'mitznei Hashem lekem." Then they bow down. So the Gemara says, "Eibachana." Why don't we switch it around and say that the first half of the day, maybe that's when they Um, maybe the first half of the day is when they actually, maybe the first half of the day is when they actually do the davening. Maybe the first half of the day is when they actually do the davening and the laning, and then the second half of the day they look into the deeds. Says the more no loy that doesn't make sense because you have a pasuk the siv elai yasfu kol chared v'divrei okay, so everyone is afraid of the words of Hashem gathered together. Right on the debasement of the exile, of the people in the exile. Uchsiv, over Minchas, and we have the passage there in Ezra, it says, Minchas ever in the afternoon, come to me, Taanit, I got off from my fast, V'afar Sokape El Hashem, and I put out my hands to Hashem and started davening. In other words, the davening comes in the second half of the day, and the Ma'ayin and Milsa comes in the first half of the day. Okay, we'll have to stop over here.